Amen. All right, I was joking with Manny last night about making sure, I usually make sure when I put the teaching together that I have 80 to 100 verses to read. And he said, well, maybe you'll just get through 3 or 4. So we did get through about 15, so that was better than that. But look, I just am excited about getting real with myself in the context of him. Okay? And sometimes we have those very disappointing moments where we like, you know what, I've been walking this out for a while, and then we go look in that mirror, like James tells us, and then we look in that mirror and we go, oh, you got to be kidding me. I still look like me. But sometimes when we look in the mirror of the Word, we can get really frustrated because you still see you and not him. Anybody suffer from that? Okay, I guess I'm the only one. Okay, so you guys are just too tired to raise hands today. Okay. So, actually, don't forget, I went to that motivational conference. I can get you all up, jumping and everything. That'll get you going. Maybe I should start off like those guys come out with the music and the dancing and they're clapping and they get everybody up and going, and then we give the sermon. Then you'll all be awake. Might have to try to do that a little bit. All right, that being said, this is the Afterburn. Okay, so if you have comments or questions during this time, we take comments and questions on the teaching that I just shared. If you're on live stream, we do have Nate and Rob over there taking things down on the live stream. And if you are here, Kirk, you gonna walk around the mic? Okay, Kirk will go around the mic. And so we're gonna begin with Dawn. Please keep the comments or questions, especially for those on live stream, keep the comments and questions to today's teaching, or at least this series if possible. If I said anything that triggered questions about other things, please don't be offended if I either say it's addressed in a particular teaching already and send you to it. Recognize that I have absolutely no compunction, no reservation to promote my teachings that already exist, knowing full well that they're for free. Okay? So I don't feel any like self-serving or anything to say, well, and that teaching's available for just, $49.95 or something. No, they're all free, online, available. So if I send it to you, it's because it's better for you to listen to the full teaching than me answer it in 2 minutes. Okay? Dawn, go ahead and get us started.
It's more of a comment. Leyland was able to put something together today that you were talking about the once saved, always saved. How, that's not actually accurate. You also at one point had said when in regard to when people are against leadership, but they went to a conference and then they took questions afterwards. Her insight today was, how can people believe in once saved, always saved, and then continue to go back to church? Once they're saved, aren't they good? Why are they still going back if they're good? So I thought that was pretty neat.
That was a good insight from your daughter there. That was very good. Look, the children are starting to get it, and that's important. Light bulbs are going on. They're because they're starting to have a relationship with the information. Okay? Information is just information until the light bulb goes on. You go, I get it. Because see, with the once saved, always saved, you'd wonder, well, then why are we all still here? Why is he waiting to bring us all into the kingdom? Why do we have to go through this miserable thing called life? And it's not miserable all the time. I enjoy my life. So do you, and you enjoy. There are moments when we really enjoy ourselves. But there's also those frustrating moments when we realize I'm not growing and progressing, as fast as I'd like to. The progress is slow. All right? Okay, who's next? Okay, Craig?
Is one of the reasons why failure is so difficult and hard to handle because of James chapter 11, that in some place we know that when we fail, people are going to talk about us behind our backs, talk to other people about our failures, instead of actually attempting to help. It's always, kind of gathered up and just, just not really what we should be doing as a body, as in trying to help that person through failures. But so when we get together with these people, we're talking about them, and I think that the failure with 11 kind of goes together.
Okay.
That without us as a body doing that 11, it'd be a lot easier for us to work through failures too.
Okay, so first let me clarify that it's chapter 4, verse 11, not chapter 11, because there aren't 11 chapters. Okay, so that would be a real failure on our part. Why aren't we doing James chapter 11? Because it stops at chapter 5. No, but he meant James chapter 4, verse 11. Yeah, James should have written more. It would have been great. Anybody want more chapters from James? Okay. But let me just also say this, Craig. I agree with you 100%, but part of the problem is that when people do approach people that have made mistakes and have failed, then instead of receiving, they get defensive or they attack the person for criticizing. So we have a hard time giving constructive criticism. We have a really hard time receiving constructive criticism. And so even though it sounds good on paper, it's really hard to apply, okay? Because while it is true that if we could just do what you said, the problem is more often than not, the person on the receiving end of it, even if it was done right, tends to attack back and feel like they're being attacked, even though they may not be being attacked, okay? So it's hard. Now, often they are being attacked because the person who had the failure done to them is feeling like they've had, that they've been hurt in some way or damaged in some way, so they're mad. Okay, I get that. And so it's hard for the person who feels like they've been damaged. Like, let's say you're on a job and you're contracted to do something and somehow it doesn't go well, okay? Or you are doing something voluntarily for somebody, whatever it is. Well, guess what? If it doesn't go well, the person you were doing it for is not going to be happy. And they probably are not going to exemplify all the stuff we read today, and they can come and get real mad at you. And then, again, remember, it takes two to decide how to diffuse that. The first person could have said, hey, I'm not happy with what happened here, whatever it was, right? And say, what are you going to do to fix it? I need you to fix this. Or the first person could have flipped out and got all angry, and the person receiving could have said, I'm really sorry, I understand why you're upset, this is not what it should have been, let me have an opportunity to fix it. There's different ways to go, but you know what? That never happens. Well, almost never, okay? Because usually the person does get upset, and usually the person does get defensive. And then it doesn't really work well, okay? So ideally, I would agree, I agree. But ideally, it would work this way. Unfortunately, we're human beings and we don't work in the world of ideal. But we need to be striving towards it, okay? So you got to own your stuff. That means that you must own. If you failed, own it, apologize. You commit to fix it, regardless of how they came to you. It doesn't matter that they came to you all mean and screaming and upset or whatever it was. No, own it and fix it. Okay? Whichever role is you, own your part. If you're the one that got the bad thing done or the thing failed or whatever way, then you need to own, I need to handle this well, go to my brother and try to handle it correctly. Not talk to everybody else about my brother, but go to my brother. Now, how it goes back and forth from there, based on that is how things are going to progress. But at least you have to own your part in it. Go to your brother, your sister, whatever it is. But if you're the one that the person's coming to and you're the one that messed it up, own it, fix it. Okay, make it right. Okay? There's people on both sides of this. And you have to know your part. Okay? Because each side can mess it up. At some point, somebody needs to step up and go, okay, I'm going to own my part and do whatever I can the correct way. Now, if you're the one that had the damage done to you and the other person's just not listening, whatever, then you go to leadership. And then we try to sit down and work it out. Don't talk to a lot of other people about it and how it works out. But we're human beings. We're human beings. I don't know what else to say. Okay, that should be enough right there. We're human beings. All right, which means that, I want you to be humans being Yeshua, not humans being human. Ooh, there you go. Okay, stop being humans being you. Be him. All right. Where's the mic? Oh, in the back. Okay, go ahead. Live stream.
Okay, from Janice Schreiber. What is the best way for those of us living in the dispersion to pinpoint our weaknesses and figure out how to begin the great undo of the damage of our past?
Counsel. Okay, look, it all starts with, I talked to somebody the other day, and they may even be online. I'm not trying to embarrass them, so I'm not going to mention names or anything. But there's a lot of people like this couple I talked to, and they don't know me very well. In other words, they're struggling with certain things, and they came and found me as a teacher, and they started to like some of the things that I was saying, but they didn't want to just do them because they liked what I was saying. And I told them, I said, look, your first job, all of you have a first job. Find the teacher you're supposed to be sitting under. That's your job. But once you find that teacher, get into counsel with that teacher. And that's how we deal with this stuff. So my comment to you is, first, I guess I should be looking this way. First, the people running the live stream desk is over here. That's why I keep looking that way. But first, decide if I'm your teacher. I'm just talking in this literal situation. And then, if that's the case, that you're willing to now come under and submit to that teacher as someone who can speak into your life and guide you through these, this journey of figuring out all your mess, then call and get counsel, okay? Don't send me a 14-page email telling me all your mess. I will not read it, okay? That's not because I'm mad at you. I don't have the time to try to sort through all of that stuff, that emotional vomit, so to speak, of all your life, and I can't really respond to it in an email. But call me and I'll spend 2 hours with you on the phone if it's necessary. And then we could deal with all your stuff. Okay, but don't ask me to read it, because I'll be frustrated not being able to deal with it and help you and work through it, okay? So that would be my encouragement. Hopefully that answers the question. Next question.
From Huili, Rabbi, you said that this is leading to a forever community. Is it wise then for those of us without fellowship to seek it and not be flies on the wall?
Yes. Okay, look, it's not, it's not possible logistically for everybody to move to a place. But we see that whenever Abba was working with people, they would gather in communities in different places, and people would move to those communities so that they're gathered together. And most of you look, how many in the congregation have moved here to be here? It's more than half the people, okay? Why? Because when they were watching the live stream, they said, what they have there, I don't have here, and I need that. I'm going to move here. So if it's logistically possible, I would encourage you to be a part of the community. Now, you could do it virtually like you're doing right now, okay? Why don't you talk this way? You could do it like you're doing it right now. You're communicating through the virtual congregational situation we have. You can come on Tuesday nights to our Torah studies. You can make phone calls and get counsel and that kind of thing. But I would encourage people, look, I don't think everybody needs to just move to Tennessee. Well, yes, I do. No. It'll be a lot easier for me because you'd be here and I can deal with you face to face. But it's the best thing, in my opinion, for you and your children to be in a community, wherever that is. And we're trying to build some in different places around the country that are more convenient to people who live in those areas. But you know what? If you ran out of work, you might move where there's work. Right? Any of you ever moved because of work? Okay? People have moved because that's where the work is. Well, you know what? Maybe it's just as important or more important to move where the body is, where the fellowship is, where the context of walking this out together can be experienced. And one of the ways you can do this is, and really I'm so used to looking this way, it's weird to look this way. But one of the ways you can do this is come to the feasts and experience, at least for 8 or 9 days, what this feels like. And you may just realize, I need this all the time. And then you may try to work on arrangements to be here. Or to find one of our other communities that we're trying to put together, groups that we're putting together, where at least you can have a service you can go to once a week. I mean, we're not all living on a property, and doing our own sort of, Messianic Waco or something. We're all living in Cleveland, Tennessee, mostly Chattanooga, various, but a lot of people are moving here to be in community. And we do a lot of things together, and we get to have this experience. Now, I know the virtual thing is great. It doesn't come close to what it is if you're here. So I would recommend coming to a feast. Come to Passover or come to Sukkot and spend a week with us. Or not, when I say with us, mean with each other. And for some of you, it's going to be a really kind of interesting experience because you're going to come and meet a bunch of people you already feel like you know, even though you've never met. Okay, and that's really cool to watch. I watch people always, as they're coming to registration, and they turn around and go, oh, I know you. And the funny part is, it's a lot of you guys on the virtual screen, you know us because you see us all the time, even though we don't know you. Which is fine, though, because you know us, because you see us up here and you see the camera go around, you see people who are standing up, and you know everybody. It's more comforting than going to a place you don't know anybody. And we will get to know you quickly. Okay? Next question.
From Cheryl, am I guilty of judging when I keep my teenage daughter away from a family member who is a horrible example in all things of Yahweh?
Okay, this is this is where we always get in trouble. Not in trouble, but this is where we struggle. Using judgment, discernment, is not judging. It's judging when you've labeled the person as awful sin or whatever. But if you can use judgment to say, I'd rather not, using discretion, I'd rather not have my child spend time with this person who I believe is really not a good person for them to be hanging out with. I'm not judging why they're that way. I know they're walking out their own walk. They have their own struggles. Now you're using discretion. But when you say something like, well, I don't want my kid hanging out with that loser jerk, blah, 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 now you're judging. Don't judge them. Their walk was their walk. Their struggles are their struggles. If you were in their shoes, who knows? You might be just, like the old phrase people used to say, but for the grace of God, that would be me. Okay? We don't know enough. Oh, yeah, I do know. It's my brother. Well, but you do, but you don't. Okay? Or my sister or my uncle. It's wise. It's wisdom to protect your family members from those that you feel are unsafe for them or inappropriate. But that's judgment and discernment, okay? That's the important thing. Hopefully that makes some sense, all right? Okay, let me just kind of give you one more example. I see a group of people over here doing something, and I realize they're doing something I feel I probably don't need to be involved in, and I use discernment and judgment to turn around and go in a different direction. Now, if I look at them and say, wow, they're sinners, they're awful, they're losers, now I'm judging them. Instead of just going, I don't know why they're doing what they're doing. I'm not going to discern and try to figure out what their motivations are, what kind of people they really are. I'm just going to use discretion to decide I probably am better suited not being involved with that. You see the difference? Judgment, not judging. All right, go ahead, next.
Janet Hoffman says, in the context of marriage, being a peacemaker and forgiving is very important. How can we help each other to seek peace and be like Yeshua with a humble spirit, seeking and trusting his wisdom first?
Let me think for a second how I want to do this. All right, I'm going to say something, but I don't want it to come across disrespectful, not to you, but I don't want you to think I'm being disrespectful to Yahweh. Stop thinking so Christian. What I mean by Christian is it's so easy in Christianity to spiritualize everything and make it all about how do I do it like with Yeshua and how do I get the Spirit. You know what? Deal with the person in front of you. Focus on them. Instead of focusing on, well, I don't know what Yeshua the Torah. No, you got a real person in front of you that you're having an issue with. Figure out why they're upset. Why is the peace gone? What's disturbed it? What did you do? Go back to the teaching that I've already given you in the beginning when I was talking about these things. And live in that reality, trusting the Spirit to give you words, trusting the Spirit to lead you to do the things that bring peace. Prayerfully asking for help in doing that, but focus on the other person and you in that relationship in a context of Him. See, Christianese would be, or the Christianized way of looking at it is like, well, I'm just going to pray for God to just take it away from me or to fix. No, it's not going to happen that way. Okay? He may have miraculously taken a drug addiction away from you or some other lifestyle issue because to get you clean enough to actually start walking out Torah. But when we're talking about developing your character, which is a relational thing, he's not going to just wave his hand and take it away. So the problem is not figuring out more vertical stuff. The problem is figuring out you and your husband. Or if it's, and this is not just for Janet and her husband, but for all of you, it's figuring out you and your wife, you and your husband, whatever the relationship, or you and your kid. Because some of you really struggle with your children, or some of you have older parents, you struggle with your parents. You know what? Figure out that relationship. What is going wrong there? Why does it keep blowing up? And always start with, what am I doing that I need to change? Not what do they need to change, but what do I need to do? And then ask the second question is, and I know they need to change too, how can I help them in that change? Now, I'm going to say something that I didn't say yet, but it's really important. It's not helpful if the other person doesn't think it's helpful. How many of you have gotten in trouble for doing what you thought was just helping somebody and had to say the phrase, well, I was just trying to help, and it went really badly? You know why it went badly? Because you were filtering it through what you thought was going to be helpful. But I was trying to help. Why are you mad at me? I don't understand. I was just trying to help. Because you didn't find out what they thought would be helpful by asking them, how can I help? What can I do that would help in this, bring more peace in the house? What can I do? How can I help? Not like just figuring it out for yourself and deciding, well, this is helping them. Unless the other person thinks it's helpful, it's not. Please receive that. Unless the other person thinks it's helpful, it's not. And that's why it blows up in your face when you say, but I was just trying to help. And I believe you. You were. In your head, it was helpful. But the person receiving it has to feel the same way. So why don't you just save yourself a lot of stress and ask them, how can I help? Let them tell you what's helpful. Yeah, but I did that once and I didn't like what he said. Are you going to live in your delusion bubble and keep banging your head against the wall, doing what you think is helpful and having it not work? Or are you maybe going to try doing what the other person actually says would be helpful? That's your choice. But I promise you, you keep doing what you think is helpful that they don't, will never work. It'll just make you more and more frustrated. I promise you, it will never work. Okay, that is a great way to frustrate you, and actually, like I think Manny was just saying, that's a sign of insanity. Keep doing it, keep thinking it's going to work when you know it's not. It's not. But I'm just trying to help. Why can't they see it? Because they can't see it, because they have a different filter, and they have a different way of seeing the world than you do. They can't see it. But that's crazy, yes, and so are you, and so is all of us. We're all crazy. Okay, we're not in our sound minds. When we finally get the full mind of Yeshua in, then we finally will have a sound mind. The human mind is not a sound mind. I haven't spoken to ever anybody with a sound mind. I have ones that are more sound or more balanced, but none of us has a sound mind. You know why? Because we're still me, I. There's no soundness in that. Okay? So stop thinking everybody else is crazy but you. None of us is walking around in our right mind. Okay? Some of us are working more, some less, but all of us have big issues that we're still addressing. Okay? How do you know I'm right? Wait for the next pop quiz and you realize you're not in your sound mind. Because Abba will give you one to remind you that you haven't arrived yet. Okay, because if you have, you'd pass every pop quiz without a problem. Anybody fail a few pop quizzes in the last couple of weeks? You're not there yet then. Okay? None of us are there yet. Next question.
From Joni Schwartz. And it's more of a comment. Passing on the information and letting go is like a relay. And what kind of race would it be if the runner passed the baton and then did not let it go? How would the teammate ever win?
True. But also, the second part of that is letting go of the baton also means you have to not have a emotional attachment to what the person does with the baton. Because if that person takes the baton and starts jogging instead of running at full speed, you'll have a meltdown. I mean, you ran as hard as you could, handed that baton, bang, and the person was like, okay, just kind of jogging along. Or maybe they just looked at the baton and started playing with it and just stood there playing. But you handed them the baton. So it's both what you said is a great picture. Let go of the thing, but it's not just letting go of the thing. Release that. It's your problem at all anymore. Give them the baton and turn around and just walk away. It's theirs now. They'll dance with it, run with it, stand still, go backward, whatever they're going to do with it. Okay? Let them do what they do. Because you're going to sit there screaming at them, move! And even worse, let's say they start going off the wrong direction. You're like, where are you going? Go, because now you want to tell them how to run, you're holding it in the wrong hand. That's how controlling we are. You won't even be happy if when you go to pass it to them, they put out the hand and you're like, no, put out the other hand. I'm like, oh, come on. Just give them the thing and let go of it. All right, next question.
And then maybe let the coach deal with the person that's...
Well, yeah. Look, if you're struggling and passing things off and the person is struggling with what to do with it, then maybe we can encourage everybody to get under discipleship, get into coaching, get into a person that can actually work with them. Okay? But realize this, ladies and men, your spouse is going to be very reluctant to necessarily receive things just from you. There's too much baggage, too much history, too much trigger points. So maybe they need to speak to another lady, or they need to talk to one of the leaders. And maybe the husbands, you need to get under a leader, okay? Because if you're not coming into counsel, and I can tell you there's a lot of people in this room and online that will tell you that the counseling works, okay? Because the other person not in that relationship has the ability to get in there and say things that normally, if the other person said it, would be offensive, but because I'm not emotionally involved, they take it differently. They can receive it differently. Because a lot of you men and a lot of you women are really hard to take things from your spouse. Why? Because you've been married for 15, 20 years, and you've got all these triggers and all this history and all this junk. It's almost like, you know what I'd love to do is that after 20 years of marriage or 50, whatever that is, you get to go somewhere and have that like brain cleaned out, like a hard drive, clean all that junk out, and then not the whole memories of everything, just clean all the triggers and all the history out of there that triggers everything, and then you say, oh, hey, this is great. Because you're still reacting to stuff that's accumulated over forever. And it's so hard not to because it's a trigger, which means that when that button gets pushed, you go into autopilot and you're no longer thinking, you're only reacting. And being in reactive mode is it's probably at the cause of every bad thing. Okay, you need to get out of reactive mode. Listen, I suffer from this horribly. And so do all of you if you're going to be honest. You know the buttons that people can push on you, and you know when you push other people on. Sometimes I know you push them on purpose. Yeah, I know you do. With your husband or your wife, and you're like, you're all mad, fine, I'm going to go push a button, boom. And it goes, and you love sitting there watching the mushroom cloud. And you get out your marshmallows. Because you're mad enough to go push that button, and the wife or the husband looks at you like, oh no, you didn't. Oh, sure, oh, you went there, huh? You just push those buttons. You know. Children, you know those buttons. You can push mom and dad's buttons if you want. And they know where to push yours too. We got to stop. Get your finger off the button. Okay, stop that. Knock it off. Okay, go ahead.
All right, from Shauna. The truth is, I don't trust my non-Torah husband to do the right things with our kids. So I have never wanted to say I trust him. How do I need to look at this so I can say it sincerely?
Look, you've got to work things out in your relationship. This is always the hardest when you're in a unequally yoked situation, all right? When the husband and wife are not on the same page with the walk, it's very, very difficult. Okay, and I wouldn't even say it's easier if you're the man or easier if you're the woman. It's just not easy, period. But what you're going to need to do is you're going to have to counsel with each other and maybe get some outside help to try to come to an agreement. Two cannot walk unless they're in agreement on how they're going to walk. So you have to agree how you're walking. And then when you're in agreement, you have to trust. So right now you don't trust because you're not in agreement. So you're actually dealing with step 2 instead of step 1. Step 1, you have to come to an agreement. But you have to make an agreement knowing that you're completely seeing things differently about the walk. So how do you come to an agreement where you can respect each other at the same time as get what you want done, especially when it comes to the children? Now recognize this, and this is about the children. I want you to have a minimal, I don't know if that's the right word. I want you to have less concern than maybe you have at the moment about your children and their walk, because it doesn't ultimately make any difference until he touches them and they make their own choices. So don't be so afraid, well, but if I let him bring the Christmas tree in the house and I let him do all the stuff and my kids get ready, it doesn't matter. When they get to that place, let me use my son as an example. My son is vegan now. There's not a thing I'm going to do that's going to get him to put a piece of meat in his mouth. He's made his own decision. If your kid makes a decision about Christmas, they will make their own decision. You know that. When your children get their own brain going and their own thoughts going, it's like the immovable object. So don't worry about that they're being exposed to things that you don't agree with, Torah-wise, this-wise, that-wise. When he opens up their mind and they get convicted, there's no working that out at all. Okay, they will tell him, we're not doing this stuff. So don't be so afraid of the children. What you want to make sure is you work out your walk with your husband so he respects that you're not doing certain things, so he doesn't ask you to do things you're not comfortable with. But don't be so afraid of what he's doing to the children from a walk point of view. As long as it's not like really dangerous in some inappropriate way or abusive or something, but if it's just because it's not Torah, I wouldn't worry about it as much. Is that fair? Does everybody understand that? I know that's hard. I know it hurts, but don't be so worried about it, okay? Because it's not going to matter until he does what he does with everybody. When he times it, he will open their eyes, open their ears, and open their heart, and they will have to make their own choice. Go back and listen to the teaching. Making decisions is the reason you're here. It's the reason you exist. And your children are in the same boat you are. All human beings at some point have to make decisions, and that's why we're here, to make decisions. And if they're too young to make their own decisions, don't worry about it. The decisions are being made for them. At some point, though, they will make their own choices, and they're going to make lots of them you don't like. That's why you need to, and all of you adults here who have children need to understand this. It's hard, it's brutal, but you have to go from controlling, authoritative parent when they're small and you're like, don't touch that, it's going to hurt you, to transferring authority over to them and becoming their counsel. You need to develop a loving friendship and also authority, so the parent with your children, where they will come to you knowing you're not going to blast them for every dumb thing they do, but that they will trust to come to you for counsel. See, if they're afraid to come to you for counsel, guess what they're going to do? They're not going to come to you for counsel. So just like wives, I told you about the husbands, let them make some mistakes. Your children are going to make mistakes. Let them make some mistakes. Don't beat them up for it so badly. Just look at them and say, did you learn anything? Okay, great. So you learned. Now let's make better decisions. I'm here. I try. You want them to never, ever be afraid to come to you. My children, I promise you, and I'm not just saying this, and I'm delusional. You can ask them. There's nothing I don't think that they would feel hesitant to come to me, because I've worked that with them since they were very little, that they know I may not like it, they may get in trouble even, but it's better that they come to me and let me work with them and help them and counsel them. So they're not afraid, okay? They're not afraid because I've worked that out. And they have come to me with some stuff that I'm like, okay, but they know. And they're kind of, have their heads hung down a little bit going, I know, I messed up, okay? But now they can get counsel, and they listen. They listen to some degree. That's what you parents want to make sure you're doing with your teenagers. Get them to the place where they will at least allow you to counsel them. It's hard because you want them just to obey. They're becoming adults. Obedience in adults only comes from voluntary submission. That's through relationship. Does that make sense? Okay? Obey when you're 3. Obey when you're 5. You're 15, 16, 17, it's got to be submission. Obey is a tough thing. If you force obey, you get resentful, angry children that are can't wait to get out from under you, and you'll lose them completely. Make sense? okay? So be careful about how hard you push obey to the older teenagers. Try to get them to be willing to submit because they learn to trust you and work that angle of the relationship. All right, next. You're doing lots of mini sermons today.
This is from Jess.
I haven't been here for a week. I had a lot of stuff to say.
This is from Jess E. What about when your spouse won't let you enforce or encourage Sabbath observance with the kids?
That's your relational issue again. You'll have to work out that. Same question as the one before. You're going to have to work on your relationship. Okay? Nate, go ahead.
Then I just wanted to encourage the families here and also online regarding how we move forward instead of being stagnant with where we were or just dealing with what we had in our past to influence our decisions when we talk with our loved ones or when we're working out our relationships. Our kids, even especially our teenage kids, now that they're coming to this phase, if there's a disagreement where they may disagree with us in the house, and they're always respectful, don't get me wrong. If I feel that there's enough disagreement in them, I have encouraged them, well, give Rabbi a call and see what he says. Maybe we're in the wrong. But I think that, and there are times where they say, well, can I call Rabbi? So, and I have the choice, am I going to get emotionally like, oh, how are you going to usurp? No, if my wife and I are willing to trust in our own counsel with our rabbi, then I trust that he's not going to try to usurp our authority. But he's going to take into consideration their input as well as ours and help us to figure out how to help our children walk this out more appropriately in the context of Torah. So I just want to encourage you men, if you're not seeking counsel and how, in different things, it's not, I know I can say almost 98 to 100% of the time when I go to him for counsel, I already think I know what he's going to say or request or suggest that I do. It's usually wrong because I always have this negative connotation that comes into my mind from my past. And every time, and my wife will tell you, I've talked to him, I was like, it's not at all what I thought he was going to say. And I think there's others that can agree with that, is like learning to submit to our Father is like learning to, you'll have to go back and look at where I was a couple of years ago, but learning to submit in our leadership is how we're reflecting how we're going to submit to him in the forever kingdom. And I can honestly tell you in our family, the blessing of learning how to submit to that has exponentially bounded forward in the last couple of years. It would take me a whole day to kind of tell you all the miraculous things from point A to point B, even before we met here, but how Abba has blessed us through submission. And I would have to explain to you what exactly that looks like between him and I and my family. It's not probably not what you would think. So with that, that's all I had to say.
All right, now I appreciate that a lot. I want to kind of just translate a little bit of that into, I'm very, I don't know if impressed is the right word, but I've been impressed by the way that they've got it worked out in their house, where when one of them will call me, the other one doesn't feel like they're calling me to get the other one in trouble. As a matter of fact, they'll actually look at each other like, are you going to call first or should I call first? Because they're looking for help, not to get the other one like, well, I'm telling Rabbi what you did. It's not that, okay? But they call wanting to get the help. And so, and usually the one who calls is going to say, did the other one call yet? And I'll either say yes or no, and then we'll deal with the things. But they call when they're dealing with stuff. And now, over the time that we've been working together, they call less often because they've started to have the tools and the experiences where they don't need to call as often, okay? And I do appreciate the idea of the children. As your children are becoming adults, they should be encouraged to have a relationship with leadership so that they too know that they have those tools and resources available to them beyond just their house and their family, okay? And don't be afraid of that. The only reason you should be afraid of that is if you have not vetted the leadership and you don't trust the leadership. They do, so they don't have a problem encouraging their children to do it, because they have already worked with me for a good number of years now. And then so we have that experience, okay? But some of you can also learn from others' experiences. If you talk to them, you may be encouraged to say, well, if they were willing to try it and it worked for them, maybe it would work for me too, okay? And so, don't just be afraid of the guy up here slinging it out like, on fire as being just what you get in counsel. Although I can be pretty strong if there's a lot of noise happening and the noise has to be shut down so you can listen. Okay, there's been a few of those moments in some of the counselings I've done too, but it's just meant to quiet the noise down. Good, now we can talk. Okay? And so, but you have to be willing to give it a try. So I appreciate that encouragement to the people to understand that and how that works out. But like I said, I was impressed in the beginning how comfortable you both were to trust that if one was calling, it wasn't like, because I've had other counselors that always say, oh, did she call you already? Or did he call you already? What did he say? No, you guys are like, hey, did they call already? Okay, good, because they're going to call you soon after I'm finished or whatever, because they are going to call you. And there's never a fear of what they're going to say, just like, hey, we need help. And we're both, the husband and the wife in this case, both trust that with counsel they're going to get the help, and they've done well. They've done well. Okay. Anybody else? I think that was it. Well, Rob, you got one?
Just a question on when you was talking about releasing with our teenagers and stuff, and when people counsel with you, you always say you can counsel all you want unless you go and you have to do it. You take the counsel. You can take it, but unless you go out and actually apply it or do it. So at what point, if we have teenagers and you say we counsel, and we're at the point where we start counseling them, and they don't listen to it or they just don't do it, does it cross the line as disrespect? Then do you have to pick up the authoritative and say, do it. I've said to do it because I'm your father now. Do it.
Okay, so when I got together with some of those guys in Arizona, I think it was Harold that said to me, he said, experience is what you get when you don't get what you want. So they may need to learn by experience, which means that they may need to understand that doing what they're doing or not listening brings consequences. So it's not forcing them to do it, but having them understand that if you're going to keep doing this, and the way you do it is this, especially as they get older teenager, is you say, look, in my father's house, there's rules. In my house, there's rules. And if you want to stay in this house, you got to learn to live by the rules. And while you're in this house, if you break any of the rules, there are consequences. Okay, because you have a covenant with your children. And in that covenant, there's an expectation of doing and not doing. And if they don't keep in the covenant, there are consequences, just like we have with our Heavenly Father. Okay, so just recognize that so that you tell your children, that's fine. You don't have to listen to me, but I don't have to let you have a phone or a tablet or whatever. Whatever it is you want to take away from them, so they understand there's consequences. Like, I don't want to take stuff away from you, but I'm trying to help you. You don't see it as help at this point. You don't see it as being important at this point. And so I want you to learn a different lesson in life. When you don't follow according to the rules of the thing you're obligated to and under, there are consequences to it. Guess what? If you decide to do something out there in the world that breaks a law, there's a consequence. You break Torah, there's a consequence. You don't obey your parents when you're children, there can be consequences. So teaching them consequences, Rob, I think is fine. The idea of forcing them, no, you don't have to do it, but as long as you're not doing it, this is the consequence. Okay, you don't want to do it? Don't do it. But if you're not doing it, then you don't get this or this or this, because those are things that you get for doing what I say. Okay? Isn't that what Deuteronomy 28 says? All right, the first half of the chapter says, if you do what I say, you get all this good stuff. If you don't, you get all this other stuff. He never says you have to obey. He just tells you, if you obey, you get this stuff. If you don't, you get that stuff. Your choice. So tell your teenagers, look, to get all this wonderful stuff that I provide you as a parent, I expect certain things. If you don't, then you don't get them. Does that make sense to everyone? And don't be angry about it. Just very calmly say, well, then let me have your stuff, or this is no longer this is taken away from you. What? Well, I told you. It's a consequence. So now you have a choice. Do you want to listen? I would love it if you would listen. I'd love to give you back your stuff. But you see, remember, what is the big problem in teenagers? They discovered self-sovereignty. Okay? Now, this is not a bad thing, because you cannot submit yourself to Yeshua till you have full control over you, which means that other people are no longer influencing you. No other authorities are pulling you and pushing you and dragging you in different directions. You need to get a full, complete hold of you so that you can then voluntarily submit yourself to him. So the children are only starting to figure out that they can say no, that they can ignore authorities and have some sovereignty. Now they need to learn the other side lesson of that, which is, and when you do, there are consequences. You're free to do whatever you want. Just know there's consequences. And some of the whatever you want might mean you're outside the house. Go find someplace else to live. And so we have to be clear. Now, they should know the consequences as soon as the issue comes up and say, look, now that this issue came up, you need to know. This is a moment where I'm going to lay out. If you don't fix this, this is the consequence. I'm not telling you have to fix it. You're free to do what you want, but this is the consequence. If you don't fix it, then this will happen. Does that help, Rob? Okay. That's just doing what Yahweh does. He tells us, if you don't fix things, this is what's coming. All right, anything else? Are we good? All right, let's get the children from upstairs. Shabbat Shalom! Shavua Tov! We love you!